PhORCAS itself is a vehicle to communicate, application information. It's neither good nor bad. It has its shortcomings. But I think the application strategy for students is something that, I've seen some things that I typically, would advise students against, which is, again, only putting the applications in at the, in our area, it's the Philadelphia, like the hub, the University of Pennsylvania, Jefferson, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Great programs, but again, they have a limited number of spots and they get a ton of applicants, I'm sure. So you might want to look a little bit more strategically at how you spread your phase one applications around. So that's one of the major pitfalls I see is, how students make the decision on which programs to apply to initially.
So every year, it's a little hard to get on for some reason, finding that password and getting back on to PhORCAS. It's a great system. So it is much better than the paper system or the system that we had implemented that was online. So I think it's fantastic. I do think they have a lot more bells and whistles that I'm able to probably use for the number of applicants that we get. And so we've come up with our own system for when all the applications come in our review. Probably the biggest issue I've had that was a major flub on my part was a misunderstanding when I was sending out emails to the candidates that were not successful, to tell them thank you for applying, but that they were not selected. And I thought it was only one page at a time instead of checking everyone. So everyone got the email, including the people I had already invited for an interview. So needless to say, my email kind of blew up and people were calling me and paging me. And before I didn't even have a chance to fix it, I noticed it right away. But everyone was definitely paying attention to that.
I would just say, I actually had a student ask me this one time and they were like, do I have to fill out all of the fields in PhORCAS? And I'm like, yes. So I think that I'm not sure if candidates truly understand what the end product looks like to us. And when you fill out fields in PhORCAS, that it puts it into a PDF document that then we download and look at. So I think that it's really helpful to, and I know you can't put everything in the fillable fields. There's things that you do have to select of, okay, I'm going to highlight this type of community service or this type of presentation I did. So I think that it's important that people are selective about what they put in there, but that it's also comprehensive and that they fill everything out completely. I think some people rely on, my CV will tell that, and it will, but I think it just shows a lot of attention to detail if they filled out that part appropriately. Mm-hmm. And one more thing about PhORCAS is being uber conscious about uploading the appropriate letter of intent to the correct program.
So I think missing documents, I don't know if people don't understand the instructions or how to upload, but sometimes there's some missing items and we can't fully screen a candidate if it's not, if it's not complete. So that's a pitfall. And then also just providing, feedback just so that you can remember a candidate. There's a small portion on PhORCAS, but I feel like I still have to make separate notes for when we're going through and saying who are we going to actually invite for interviews.
Yeah, so I've seen some really fantastic letters of intent, and it's a great mix of, the story of why the student chose pharmacy. I'm always interested in reading that. Everybody has a different story down the pharmacy career path, but what and it's a good mix of that plus why they feel they're going to be a good fit for my program. Right. And that's really helps the candidate selection committee here make that decision is, everybody has their story about, okay, this is why I chose pharmacy, and it's great. But what would make you a stronger candidate to fit our program than anyone else?
The best letter to me was one that gave a little bit of personal information, told a story, not a big long story, but just a little snapshot into why they were passionate about the area of their interest, what got them to the point that they were at seeking residency. And then the one that, helped me understand why they thought Duke was a good fit. They knew a little bit about our program. They were able to tell me the qualities and the experiences they had that they felt would be a good match.
I think letters of intent, we're often looking for a really good explanation of, why you're interested in the program, but what you're going to bring to the program and what's specific about that program that has interested you. And I think people don't often take it that far. But that, I think, is something that's really good to highlight. I think that the best letters, and I guess now more even recommendations, because in the PhORCAS system, sometimes you're not actually getting a letter, right? It's more based, you have to comment on different criteria. But I think it's the more detail, the better. And when people can provide solid examples, I think is really helpful.
The best letter of intent would include program goals. So I want to ensure that the candidate's goals, short-term and long-term, aligns with the program goals. So I like to see that listed in the letter of intent. Also, I like to see if they had any personal experiences that relates to why they're applying for the particular residency program. So I like it to be personal, but also, tying that into the goals of the residency program.
I can't believe I have to say this, but I do, and I have gotten applications with misspellings, drug names misspelled. My biggest pet peeve, though, I can take a couple of misspellings here and there, but my biggest pet peeve is when I get a LOI that says "to whom it may concern."
That's very impersonal.
I don't read it past that, to be honest, because that tells me is the applicant didn't even take the time to investigate, who's going to be on the other end of that letter reading it, and let alone personalize it to my site. So honestly, don't even waste your time. If you're gonna, if you're not going to personalize it, at least with the name of the, program director who's going to read your application and spend that time. To me, it's really, that's a huge issue for me. Gotten LOIs with wrong, they mentioned the wrong name of the organization in the body of the letter. So make sure that all that is accurate to the site that you're applying to.
Well, common mistakes are addressing it to the wrong residency program or the wrong director. I think sometimes people get in a little bit of a hurry and they're trying to, apply to lots of different programs. And then I do think it's really important because it is the one thing that you're writing to tell us a story about you. And so having someone proof it, there should not be any errors in there. And, when I'm reading that, if there are lots of errors, it certainly calls my attention to that. So spelling errors, punctuation errors, that kind of thing.
I think that's a big one, and that's just a major attention. That happens routinely. And I get it. I totally get it. But that's kind of a red flag when you're like, okay, you didn't even upload the right document. So definitely double checking that, I think is huge. I also don't like when your letter of intent just tells me everything I could read in your CV. So, it should be explaining your intent. I should not be reading things that I can get out of your CV. So what is really your intention, and what are you trying to get out of, and kind of what are your career goals? I think that sometimes when you read some letters of intent, it leaves you wondering, what path does this person actually want to take? And then it makes it difficult to determine if that person is really invested in your specific program. So I think that's extremely important.
So often I find that their professional goals do not meet the goals of the residency program. So that would be my number one thing that I look for and screen for candidates, just because you don't want to, I don't want to say waste your time, but you want to make sure that the time that you have to spend during an interview is valuable to both the program and the candidate. And Lord forbid that you rank them number one and then their goals don't align with, what the program offers. I always want to make sure that the goals align, and then also that the resident is going to have a valuable experience.